Hello, my name is Edward Ruby. Welcome to another edition of Our Nation, presented by Diesal Army. Today, we'll be talking about a concept that dominated American society in the early 1800s, the Abolitionist Movement. The Abolitionist Movement desired to end not only the institution of slavery, but as well as the social stigma that surrounded African Americans. We will discuss its context in the Greater Antebellum Reform period. In this series, we'll have interviews with experts on the subject of the abolitionist movement with our own Justin Ingram and Justin's Corners. I hope you enjoyed this splendid presentation.
Hello, and welcome to Ingram's Corner. Today we are going to be interviewing a special guest, an expert on the origins of the abolition movement, J.B. Bruggaman. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Would you like some milk?
Yes, please.
Thank you. My first question was, could you help us enter the American psyche around the 1800s and tell me some of the foreign factors that helped influence the abolition movement?
So, of interesting note is that the American abolitionist movement wasn't actually the first big abolitionist movement. And in fact, the Haitian slaves freed themselves from the oppressive French in 1803. And in addition to that, the British Empire actually abolished slavery as well in 1834. So between those two, we can see that foreign powers had identified that there's no need for slavery.
All right, thank you. And what caused the abolition movement to take so long to gather steam in our country?
So the South was nothing without slavery. Slavery ran their economy. They couldn't work the fields without slavery. Therefore, because it was so economically important, it was also very politically important. And now there was an impasse between the free slaves of the North and the enslaved slaves of the South. And between the two, nothing could actually get done. They had great impasses, and therefore, because of these impasses, there was only compromises, not change. Compromises such as the Missouri Compromise would eventually, in the future, lead to something a little bit more deadly.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. And that should conclude Ingram's Corner. Good day.
The key origin of the abolitionist movement was the atrocities committed on slaves, from beatings, torture, and mass murder, not to mention the immorality of owning another man. Coming together through misdeeds such as the Dred Scott decision, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the conviction of John Brown, people saw this terrible treatment of human beings, and many felt it was their duty to end this practice. A key member of the abolition movement was the Second Great Awakening, led by priests like Lyman Beecher, which caused a fervor of political activity to remove the country from sin, especially the sin of owning another man.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed our section about the origins of the abolition movement. Now, we'll be moving on to the key leaders of this movement. Enjoy.
Hello, welcome to this edition of Ingram's Corner. Today we have Edward Ruby, our specialist in the abolition movement.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you. Would you like some water?
Yes, please.
All right, Edward. My first question for you is, who were the prominent leaders of the abolition movement, and what were they doing to push for the abolition of slavery?
Well, there were many, of course, but one of the most prominent was William Lloyd Garrison. Now, he was born in 1805 in the New England area, but he didn't begin his push towards the abolition of slavery until the age of 25. Now, he's most well known for his publishment of The Liberator, which he began in 1831. Now, William Lloyd Garrison was one of the most radical abolitionists. He wanted the immediate emancipation of every slave, no matter what, and he wanted it this instant. Now, he felt the Constitution was actually promoting slavery and was an awful document and should not stand for the liberties of America.
Interesting. Now, my second question was, were there any African Americans who publicly pushed for the abolition of slavery?
In fact, yes. Now, Frederick Douglass was born in 1818, and his mother was actually a slave, and he was a slave for the young portion of his life. Now, his father was white, but he is an unknown man. So he gains freedom in 1838 when he ran away, and ever since that day, he did whatever he could to promote slavery, writing a biography about his life and other documents to help the slaves and help push for the freedom. And William Lloyd Garrison was one of his great mentors during his life.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Edward.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And this concludes Ingram's Corner.
William Lloyd Garrison, The Liberator, 1831.
Within sight of Bunker Hill and in the birthplace of liberty. That standard is now unfurled, and long may it float, unhurt by the spoilations of time or the missiles of a desperate foe, yet till every chain be broken and every bondman set free. Let southern oppressors tremble. Let their secret abettors tremble. Let the northern apologists tremble. Let all the enemies of the persecuted blacks tremble. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard.
Some abolitionists spoke through their words, like William Lloyd Garrison, while some spoke through their deeds, like Harriet Tubman, an African-American woman born in 1820, helped free thousands of slaves by smuggling them north using her underground railroads, hiding them from oppressive bounty hunters and southern slave owners. Wow, what a segment. Now we'll be moving on to the successes and achievements of the abolitionist movement. Enjoy.
Oh, hello and welcome to Ingram's Corner. In this edition, we're going to look at the achievements of the abolition movement. Sadly, our expert couldn't come in today, but we have his intern, Jimmy Kane. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, great to be here.
It's good to see you too. Would you like some margarita mix?
Of course. It's a lot.
Oh, sorry. Alright, thank you for coming. My first question is, what were the abolitionist movement's goals?
Well, the primary objective of the abolitionist movement was to emancipate all slaves and end racial segregation and discrimination.
Alright, thank you. And my second question is, what goals did the abolitionists achieve?
The abolitionists during the antebellum reformist period achieved the goals of really raising the question of morality about slavery.
Oh, that's really important. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. I'll see you in the next edition of Ingram's Corners. Adios.
The primary objection of the abolitionist movement was the immediate emancipation of slavery, which is distinct from anti-slavery groups who strive for the abolition of slavery over time with the middle stage of liberty for slaves. This movement led way to the question of morality of slavery, which gave way to proponents for abolitionism. Key figures like Frederick Douglass gave way for people to voice their opinion on slavery, publicly exemplified in his newspaper, the North Star. William Lloyd Garrison and his followers, known as Garrisonians, politically advocated the abolition of slavery, exemplifying the growing popularity of abolitionism. These key figures and followers led way to social acceptance of slaves and colored people, demonstrated by the founding of the first integrated college, founded in the 18th.
Well, that was educational. Now moving on to our final segment, the abolitionist movement in the greater context of the antebellum period. Enjoy. Oh, welcome to a very special edition of Ingram's Corner, hosted by myself, Edward Ruby. Now we have a very special guest today, your very own Justin Ingram. Let's give him a hand, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. Now, can I interest you in a scoop of ice cream by our sponsor, Ryder Slow Turned Ice Cream?
I would love a scoop.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Greater Antebellum Reform time period. Now, what can you tell me about how the abolitionist movement connected to the Greater Antebellum Reform period?
See, this whole period is connected as they have the same source, and all the movements began through the Second Great Awakening, which swept all across the country and gave all the individuals of our great country the thought that they could help create a better country by improving its morality. And the abolition movement was just another one of these, as they believed that slavery was a sin and therefore had to be corrected in the state.
Oh, splendid, thank you. Now, how were the other civil rights movements similar to the abolition movement?
They were similar as they were all trying to free somebody from an oppressor, whether it was the women's rights movement, which tried to free women from men, or it was the civil rights or the labor rights, which were trying to free the labor workers from these millionaires who were oppressing them. The slavery was the same sort of thing, obviously was trying to save these African Americans from their white oppressors.
Oh, thank you very much for coming in today. From me and Fluffy, good day, folks. That's the conclusion of Ingram's Corner.
Thank you. It is important to not forget how connected all the antebellum movements were. The temperance movement, the equal pay movement, and women's rights movements all spurned from the same Second Great Awakening. All the sister movements used their combined strengths to help persuade the country that the flaws in the state needed to be fixed, and together they created a joint movement of change.
Well, that was just splendid. Well, this concludes our segment of the abolitionist movement in our nation. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I hope you found this both educational and enjoyable. Have a great day, folks.
And go Bells.